Our first guest today is just back from the border in Arizona and is bringing a message to Republican holdouts that urgent action is still needed and they should pass the president's plan. Please say hello to Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas. Senator, I know you went down there to call on the troops from Fort Riley in Kansas who were stationed at the border and do all that, but you are coming back with a message for Senate Republicans that there's urgency here.
Right, Chris, it's great to be with you. And certainly for 4 years, I was telling the White House we need to send the military there to back up the Border Patrol. Indeed, they've done that, to your point, 700 troops from Fort Riley there, and they've made a difference. This is a border, Tucson border area, where some 2,000 people were crossing the border every day a year ago, December. Today, there's less than 50 people crossing the border a day. So they've secured the border, but they're not done. We still have human trafficking, fentanyl coming across the border. So to secure the border for at least the next 4 years, we need this $175 billion that's in this one big, beautiful bill. And to a person, when I talk to Border Patrol, they say exactly what's in this bill is what we need. There's 2,000 miles of some type of barrier they're going to put up. It's going to increase the number of Border Patrol officers by 15% and increase the number of ICE removal agents by over 100% as well. So what's the funding in this big, beautiful bill is exactly what we need to secure the border.
How much did you say the border funding piece is?
$175 billion.
99.999 is a lot of nines. That's pretty close to 100%, the president says. Why, given the fiscal difficulties that the United States government is in right now, why is that good enough for another 1,000% of security?
Well, I think it's what's getting across the border is the problem. I think it's the human trafficking. I think it's the fentanyl poisoning. We were, even in the short day that we were there, we saw people still making it through. We're still losing some 200 to 300 Americans every day to fentanyl poisoning. Now, the sheriff's officers back home tell me that number's starting to come down. But don't underestimate the cartel. This is a war. They are an organized crime unit. They're a paramilitary type of unit. Do not underestimate them. And hopefully we don't have to keep these 8,000 military troops there forever. But when we get the fence built, and that's a big chunk of this, $45 billion of that money is going to go to this 2,000 miles of barrier. Without that, we'll have to keep the military there.
Okay, you've heard it, but I want you to listen to it again. Here's what Elon Musk had to say about the legislation.
You know, I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the Doge team is doing. I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but I don't know if it can be both.
I don't doubt your sincerity or the sincerity of any of the Senate Republicans who say that they want to get serious about debt and they want to get serious about deficit. But I guess the question is, if not now, when? If now isn't the right time, when does it ever become the right time to get serious about this stuff?
So now is the right time. And in this one big, beautiful bill, you're going to see the largest tax cut in American history, as well as the largest spending cut in over 30 years. So the House has given us $1.6 trillion in spending cuts. Now, I think we need to get that way north of $2 trillion. And now is the time to address that. But if we don't get this bill across the border, you're going to see the largest tax increase in history. What this bill means to that average American family back home is they're going to get to keep $1,000 more a month in their pocket. That's a big deal. You're making $60,000, $80,000 a year to be able to keep that $1,000 a month more. For seniors, they're going to have their first $43,000 is tax-free as well. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime. So there's a lot of good things in this bill. Look, the first thing we need to do, Chris, is grow the economy, and that's what this bill is going to do. Go rolling back regulations, build the economy. We need to stabilize spending and continue our work to cut spending as we go through the appropriations process.
That does sound an awful lot like what they said the first time around with the 2017 tax cuts, which was we'll grow our way out of it. But the government still ran trillion-dollar deficits even when the economy was growing.
Yeah, what we saw, though, is under Joe Biden, we went from $4.5 trillion a year spending to $7 trillion overnight. That was all because of COVID, so to speak. But look, COVID's over. I agree that we need to go back to those pre-COVID spending levels. We can't, you have a great big ship, you turn it too quickly, I think you're going to dump people over. But we're seeing such great numbers for the economy coming out right now. Consumer sentiment is good. Over 52% of the people, the first time in the history of the Rasmussen poll, 52% of Americans think we are going in the right direction. It's the start of a brand new golden age.
Well, we're not going to talk about Rasmussen poll. I will not offer any critiques of Rasmussen polling here today. In that building behind us, Words, different things mean different things to different people. There was a sort of a test case with the Senate parliamentarian on the question of California's EV mandate. So California was going to ban gas-powered cars. You and the other Senate Republicans said that is not allowed, and you rolled it back. Senate parliamentarian disagreed and said, and you guys essentially worked around that to be able to do what you wanted to do. Democrats say you're actually weakening the filibuster, that what you're doing here is weakening the filibuster. And I know that Democrats and Republicans in the past have evaded the parliamentarian and even replaced parliamentarians before. What do you say, though, to the criticism that you're eroding the filibuster by undermining the rulings of the parliamentarian?
Well, we may need to get 25 lawyers in here to explain the rules of the
yes,
Senate.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, California's ruling was unfair to the rest of the country. We can't make one car for California, one car for the rest of America. We knew that this EV mandate was driving up the cost of making cars, the cost of everything for us. So Congress acted and said, we want to get rid of the EV mandate. So California can't rule the rest of the country. We can't have the tail wagging the dog.
But on this filibuster kind of question, which is what is allowed to be filibustered and what is not, what needs 60 votes and what needs 50 votes is ultimately dependent on the ruling of the parliamentarian about what comes in and what goes out. We're getting ready to big, beautiful bill this thing, and there are provisions in that legislation that many people, including some Republicans, think may fall outside of the boundaries. Do you expect that if the parliamentarian doesn't agree with what the majority wants to do, the parliamentarian might have to go?
Yeah, I think the parliamentarian in the California case, was exceeding her authority. I think that she was trying to set precedent. I think that we've worked through this before in some type of reconciliation bill. We did this in 2017. There was a reconciliation bill with the Democrats.
Certainly the Obamacare.
Obamacare as well. So it's a process, and we don't always agree with her, but I would expect us to hang in there with her within the guardrails that she's always had. But I think the California thing was an expansion of her rules.
So for as long as you've been in and around politics, the conservative legal movement has been one of the signal successes for the right in America, right? We think back to Justice Antonin Scalia and the Federalist Society and all of the work that was done, one of the big successes of Donald Trump's first term. Now we hear from the president that this was a mistake, basically, that the Federalist Society is bad and that these judges who are saying to the Trump administration, well, let me put it this way. When those judges told the Biden administration that it couldn't do the things that it wanted to do, right, on mandating this and mandating that, Republicans said, that's right, the movement was a success. Now those same judges are saying to a Republican president, you can't do the things you want to do. Is the president right? Was this sort of a mistake to follow the Federalist Society and go with this conservative legal movement that changed the way Washington works and America works over the last 50 years?
Right. Chris, if you haven't read The Art of the Deal yet, I'm sure you have, and your listeners need to go to understand who Donald Trump is. When he walks into a room, he's negotiating. I think what the president is expressing is the same thing I hear when I go back home to Kansas, that the people are frustrated. Trump 47 was elected to secure the border, to remove illegal criminals, to bring jobs back to America as well. So in this particular, now we're kind of talking about the tariffs as the latest issue. We have an international trade court, America's international trade court, exceed their typical guardrails. Look, since the beginning of time, I think our founding fathers wanted there to be friction between the three branches of government. And I think that's what we're seeing right now is friction between them. You see the president negotiating out here through the press as well. We'll see where this ends up, but I just can't compliment the president enough. His goals when it comes to these tariffs was number one is to bring jobs back to America, to stop the drugs flow as well, and then negotiate good trade agreements. To the point of the drugs, Canada and Mexico both added 10,000 troops to the border. I think that's one of the reasons that we're seeing these drops as well. So the president's goals are coming to fruition through these tariffs, and we want to support the president.
Okay, there he is. If you ever spent a day underground at the Stratica Salt Museum in Hutchinson, Kansas, you would know him already. But if you don't, here he is, Senator Roger Marshall. We thank you. Coming up.